Hey there, I'm Brendan Davis. Thanks for watching. Let me first give you some context for this footage and what you're about to watch. My original plan was to make a feature documentary about Horasis and the work that Dr. Frank-Jürgen Richter and this community of people are doing worldwide. I think it's very important. I'm doing this independently. I'm not sponsored by anyone, including Horasis, but fortunately I have their permission and I'm a part of the community as a moderator or sometimes speaker at the events. So I'm very happy to get to bring this to you. And originally, I was going to shoot all this footage and cut this together into a feature documentary, but then COVID-19 happened. And that threw a giant curveball in, of course, the entire world's plans. Among other things, it canceled the global Horasis meeting that was set for Cascais, Portugal a few months ago. I interviewed Dr. Frank-Jürgen Richter, who is the founder and chairman of Horasis, back on April 6th to get his take on that, and also to look at developments since the Vegas meeting, which was the Horasis China meeting in Las Vegas, talk about what has developed, and then also to look a little bit down the road and see what's coming. So again, the original idea was that I was just going to use a few maybe isolated sound bites of this with Frank on Skype in Switzerland, staying at home, quarantining in place, as we were all doing in different ways at the moment, and we still are here in LA at least. But after a lot of thought, and given all the givens, of which there are many, including the very long timeline of making a feature film, releasing it, etc., I thought that it was more important to build on the momentum that this could create and to update everyone about the conversations being had within Horasis. So I decided to record and release these smaller, more unfiltered updates as we go along on YouTube for free. So I hope you enjoy that. Now, in this clip, you're going to see me a little bit, and I'm in my lockdown casual mode. So I'm not kind of slicked back and wearing a dress shirt like I am now. I wasn't planning to be in the film. I recorded this just to have the interview with Frank, and I was going to use little pieces of that to add into the narrative overall. But as you'll see, including my questions, since I'm going to release this as a piece that's very lightly edited, it makes a lot more sense for this new approach. And I'm going to continually adjust my approach as things roll along. But I thought that having this ongoing dialogue online for everyone would help to better serve the goals that made me want to get involved in this in the first place, namely spreading this message about what Horasis is doing and to share the thinking of the leaders involved in the community with everyone else. Now, the last note for now is that in this video, Frank is talking about the upcoming India meeting, which at the moment we recorded, the possibility of it being an online virtual meeting was in the air. That has now been confirmed. The Horasis India meeting is going to take place on June 22nd this year, and I'm going to join hundreds of other participants attending or speaking on the panel or moderating, and I'm going to talk with Frank afterwards, as well as some other speakers I'm going to round up who would like to participate in this and get their thoughts in the mix. For now, though, please enjoy this chat with Dr. Frank-Jürgen Richter of Horasis. Please don't forget to share, like, or subscribe to my channel to be notified when I post future updates. So, thank you for meeting me today on Zoom. It's nice to see you here.
Good morning, Brendan. Very good talking to you.
Well, let's catch up on a few things. First of all, where are you? Are you at home at the moment?
Yeah, like all of us, based in my home office in Switzerland. It's a nice sunny day here. Not many people on the street. So obviously, Switzerland was one of those countries hit first, as we are sharing a border with Italy. So we got a lot of cases here. Fortunately, not many casualties because there's a good health system here. But I'm observing what's happening in the rest of the world. Of course, China, the country we are working with a lot, was able to contain the virus more or less. But now, of course, US is a new epicenter, and it's a major concern. But I'm also very much concerned for emerging countries like India, countries on the African continent, because there's no healthcare system. So a lot of concerns, but also a bit of hope. I think in times of crisis, human mankind was always able to innovate, to be creative and come up with interesting solutions.
What is the status with the global meeting that was going to be held in Portugal just last week?
Well, I was very much looking forward, Brendan, to welcome you, similar to 1,000 participants. So our flagship event, a 1 year planning, 1 year work in this meeting. And now it's not happening. And I think it was a wise decision to cancel, postpone the meeting right in advance, because with the thing of the participants and health comes always first. We've been discussion with the Portuguese authorities, and the idea is now to skip 2020 and to hold the meeting next year in spring in 2021, to make it even bigger. Of course, hoping that the virus will be totally contained by then. And some people speak about a second wave or third wave of infections. I think the virus will be around for a while, but there's hope that by next year, when the meeting is held, there will be a vaccine on the market, definitely also drugs to cure COVID-19. Life will be, I wouldn't say back to normal, but maybe something close to it. The new normal might be a mixture of, the old style of, conducting meetings, conducting business, adding a digital element to it. I think more and more conversations are taking place online, and Horasis is also moving into the digital space.
What, if any, has been the Horasis community response to the crisis? Are there sections? I mean, there's certainly people I've met who are involved in like biotech startups or ventures, for instance. Are you aware of any community members who are sort of on the front lines of confronting this crisis?
Yeah, first of all, I was actually just very touched. Just a week ago, some of our community members compiled a video. I'm not sure if you've seen it, and giving some encouragement to Horasis, and also putting forward their own vision, saying that, especially now in these times of crisis, the community has to stick together and has to work on solutions. And a lot of community members are reaching out to me saying, Frank, what about working on project A or project B, and even proposing a digital platform where Horasis members can communicate and work on projects. On top, many of our members are involved in finding solutions and trying to help their respective governments, starting from very mundane things like flying in medical equipment like masks and other equipment. And we've been seeing a lot of movements here and there. In the beginning, we're all supporting China. Now China is supporting other countries. And I think we are living in a very globalized world, and what countries should do, and which is, I think, very much reflecting also our human condition, is to keep borders open and to collaborate. I think the wrong strategy now would just to say we do it on our own, we retreat our country or our company first. And especially now in the Horasis community, we see a lot of encouragements, participants, helping each other. Horasis, ourselves, we are setting up conversations, so we are putting people in contact with each other. And so the Horasis community is going on. I think there's a very high spirit, and I think we will overcome this current crisis and come out of it even stronger.
This is an unprecedented situation in our lifetimes, but has Horasis dealt with anything close to this level of disruption previously? So what was the situation, or how was it navigated?
Well, we are very fortunate until today that, nothing similar happened. All our planned meetings took place. There was never any cancellation or postponement. Even so, we were also facing tough times. To give an example, in 2014, our Horasis Russia meeting, we held a Russia meeting for 5 subsequent years. The Horasis Russia meeting took place in Spain, in Valencia. And the meeting took place just 2 weeks after the Crimea invasion. And so we had a lot of protesters, it was, very tough because people were very noisy in front of the conference center. And then we decided to stop the meeting, right? Because Horasis, not the meeting was still took place, but we didn't continue to host the Horasis Russia meeting because we are not political. We want to be neutral, impartial, and but during the meeting we realized how difficult it could be, to host such a meeting, and when all this politics is happening, and this was a very tough moment. And then, we had also a similar moment. I think it was 2008 when our Horasis China meeting took place in Barcelona, again in Spain, and it was a time of the Olympics, and we got a lot of protest again in front of the conference center. But since then, nothing similar happened. So we try to keep neutrality. We want to engage people, even of different beliefs. Diversity is key. We work with all countries, and we want to make them hear. But I think this current crisis is definitely unprecedented. But looking back into history, there have always been pandemics. Think about, the Spanish flu of 1918, 1919, or even, the cholera pandemics we experienced before. And it was always a shock. But as we are now living in a globalized world, the news is floating around from one country to the other, and country just can't shut down on its own, and all information is public. So what we're experiencing now is really a bit of an endgame of globalization.
Since the 2019 China meeting, what have you seen in the U.S.-China relationship? What have you seen in terms of the continued evolution of that relationship? Have you seen a continuation of the spirit we sort of left Vegas with, or have you seen something different?
Well, as you said, Brendan, definitely a lot of positivity at our Horasis China meeting in Vegas. And you remember, we had two U.S. governors attending, both Republicans, and they were very positive to say, we have to find a solution. And in the following months, both U.S. and China were really sitting together and finding a solution. So soon after the Vegas meeting, we had the so-called phase one of the trade deal, and which is a very good first step. Of course, the more critical things are still waiting to be solved, in the phase two, especially intellectual property, and also the whole issue around who is really driving or leading the world, because at the end of the day, it's not so much trade only, but it's really like the leadership, right? And is it the US, is it China? But I think there have been a lot of positive signs. Now with the coronavirus, things look maybe less obvious, and I wouldn't say that it looked bad, but less obvious, because in this current situation, most countries, even in Europe, right, are very inward-looking, and I think the US is very inward-looking right now, but also China has been inward-looking for some time when the coronavirus was still there. Now China is opening up again, and they were able to contain the virus. We are planning to host our China meeting this year in Armenia, in Yerevan, and I get a lot of signs from China, from official China, to host the meeting, despite the fact that October is very close, right? And then virus might still be around, but it's a clear sign of the Chinese government saying that China is ready. China wants to work again with its partners, including America. America is not excluded. And the Armenia, as you know, is part of the new Silk Road, One Belt, One Road project. So China is very engaging on that. But coming back to the US-China relationship, I believe the last word is still not spoken here. And as you know, we have elections in the US in November, and China is also in a wait-and-see positioning here. And I think China is ready to sign a deal. China is ready to engage, but I think this virus is really like the hindering force here. That's totally unplanned. If there would be no virus, I think we would have already experiencing phase two of the trade deal.
What path forward do you foresee for Horasis for the rest of the year, given the givens right now?
Well, we have still three regional meetings this year: the Horasis India meeting, the China meeting, and the Asia meeting. The India meeting is not going to take place. It was planned for end of June, and India is in total lockdown. So it's basically impossible for Indians even to leave the country. So we are postponing it into next year, but we are planning a digital version of the meeting. So we are talking to various technology providers, and I'm pretty sure that the Horasis India meeting will take place on the 22nd of June in a digital format. And our Indian partner, the Confederation of Indian Industries, is very bullish on that. So we are in discussion of all the details and also the technical solution behind. The Horasis China meeting is planned for end of October in Armenia, as mentioned before. I think it's quite a good chance that the meeting is going to take place. Hoping that by summer the health situation is allowing us to do so. There are only a few cases in Armenia, and China wants to show the world that China is ready to reach out and to re-engage. And the last meeting this year is planned for Kitakyushu, a city in southern Japan. Here the Japanese authorities are also very keen to host a meeting. End of November, still a lot of time to go until then. The good thing is actually that both the China meeting and the Asia meeting are already very well developed. So we got basically all our speakers confirmed. So now we are just waiting and seeing and hoping that both meetings are going to take place. The India meeting is a bit of an experiment. It's an innovation. And I think, it's the right time to think about a digital version. And maybe, even in the post-corona time, we can continue with digital formats as well. The India and China meeting are always held outside the country. So we make the Indians and the Chinese travel. The Asia meeting is a Pan-Asian meeting, and it's always happening in Asia. So it's the first time we are hosting a meeting in Japan, and most of the participants come from Southeast Asia. Japan is very keen to play a proactive role in Southeast Asia. So we have a lot of participants from Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, and so on. And the idea was to actually hold a meeting not in Tokyo, neither in Osaka, but to put it into Kitakyushu, which is actually the closest city, geographically spoken, to Southeast Asia. So it's very close to the rest of the continent. Also, Kitakyushu is quite an interesting city. It's one of the oldest industrial cities of Japan. It's the home of the steel industry, and it was one of the most polluted cities in the world by the late 1950s and early 60s. And since then, the city was embarking on a green strategy. And today, it's actually Japan's green capital, with a lot of research activities going on there in the area of green GDP, green technologies, even SDGs. The mayor there is very much involved in the UN SDG program, the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think there could be no better place to hold an Asia meeting.